Well, the November presidential election is now just 16 weeks away, and already in the primaries, we saw all sorts of chaos and mayhem. Long lines, few polling places, few polling workers, and many say the worst is yet to come, including an investigative journalist who's written a provocative new book on the subject. Greg Palast, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I like the fedora.
Thank you. I'll get you one.
Your book is out today, How Trump Stole the 2020 Election. What's that all about? The election hasn't taken place yet.
Yeah, but it's already been stolen. The fix is in. But we can unfix it. We can bust the burglary. I don't want people to get despairing. I think that there's still a chance that the voters will choose the president instead of trickery. And so that's the big problem.
And when you say he's already stolen it, what do you mean?
Okay. When I say he, it's the vote thieving tricksters. In the past couple of years, we've had 16 million people purged, that is, erased from the voter rolls. Most people don't know that they've lost their vote, and our experts have gone through these purge lists in several states and found that about half are phony. We've had millions of people wrongly losing their right to vote. You can, by the way, reestablish your right to vote. Just go online and check your registration. I'm telling people about that because I don't want you to think it's gone and lost forever. No. You're still an American citizen. Please check your registration. But 16 million people have lost their vote. And unless they get it back, we already have a stolen election in swing states like Wisconsin. For example, in Wisconsin, they're trying to remove 152,000 voters. The Republican legislature voted to remove these 152,000 voters on the grounds that they moved. You know, look, if you left Wisconsin, Brian, you shouldn't be voting in Wisconsin. If you left Milwaukee, you shouldn't vote in Milwaukee. But I went to Milwaukee and I met with one of the people that was on the list of people who supposedly left Milwaukee. And I asked Saquana Taylor, have you left Milwaukee? And she said, I don't think so. I'm a Milwaukee County supervisor. But she is African-American woman. So the targeting has gone after young people and voters of color. And that's what I'm very, very concerned about. We can reverse this, but at the moment, the fix is in.
You've done some great work on this. Let's take a look at a clip where you confronted then Georgia Secretary of State, now Governor Brian Kemp, about all of this.
Mr. Kemp, are you removing black voters from the voter rolls just so you can win this election?
Sir, please do not touch him.
I'm not touching him. Mr. Kemp, are you removing black voters just to win this election? Please don't touch me or I'll have you arrested. Please don't touch me. Sir, why are you purging voters from the voter rolls? There's children. Okay. Has some decency. Sir, why aren't you answering my questions? Sir, why do we have to sue you to get the names of voters who've been removed?
And now, Greg, what's the status in Georgia?
Well, the status in Georgia is that type of trickery. I actually had to sue that guy, Brian Kemp, to get the list of voters he wants to remove from the voter rolls. And we want a federal court case. Now we're going through that list, and we're finding 1/3 voters were wrongly removed from the voter rolls in Georgia, including Martin Luther King's 92-year-old cousin, who they say had left Atlanta. She's been living in the same house for half a century since Martin Luther King used to come over for Sunday dinner. This is what's happening all over America. So in Georgia is where they took the kind of system of removing voters from the voter rolls out for a test drive. It works so well that they've taken it to Ohio and Michigan, and they're trying to bring it into Wisconsin and several other states. And that's what I'm worried about. This is a mass attack on the voter rolls. That's just one of the little tricks that they can pull. And I'm very concerned that all these voters will not get their mail-in ballots. And by the way, Brian, you can't get mail in your ballot if it's not mailed out to you. And if you're not on the voter rolls, man, you ain't getting your ballot.
And President Trump has alleged mail-in ballots will result in huge fraud. There's been no evidence of that. How do you see that issue?
Well, what I'm worried about is fraud against the voters. According to in How Trump Stole 2020, I bring in the MIT Caltech study, which says 22% of all mail-in votes are never counted. That's 1 in 5 votes. How does that happen? About 1 in 10 votes, millions of votes, the voter doesn't get the ballot. You can't mail it in if it's not mailed out to you. So there's all kinds of reasons why those ballots don't get to you. but 1 in 5 ballots are not counted. And the other half of the missing ballots are those that are mailed in. About 1 in 10 mail-in ballots are disqualified. And Brian, it's for all kinds of cockamamie reasons. You know that 100,000 people lost their vote because of postage due in 2016? We had 250,000 people lose their vote because they didn't have the right signature, or someone said they didn't have the right signature. You used the wrong ballot. Stacey Abrams, who I was working with in Georgia on these voter purge systems, an African-American voting rights leader, she almost lost her mail-in ballot because her ballot came to her in the primary with the return ballot in the Georgia humidity. The envelope was sealed. You break open that envelope, you've lost your vote. So these are the types of crazy things that happen with mail-in voting. It's not the voters who are committing fraud. The tricksters are the voting officials who are trying to make it difficult and tough and I'm not sending you your ballot or disqualifying your ballot. Beware.
But Greg, for the record, have you seen anywhere any evidence of fraud involving voters who are committing fraud with mail-in ballots, selling their ballots or somehow playing around with it?
I actually did a calculation, Brian, in the book. And I found out, I calculated that the chance of your committing mail-in ballot fraud is 1/5 as likely as being hit by lightning. That's how rare it is. We've been able to, from the Rutgers study, found that 12 people committed voter impersonation fraud in 6 years. That's out of several billion ballots cast. But we do know that literally millions of mail-in ballots have been lost because people didn't get them, et cetera. So the fraud is this teeny weeny, but the vote suppression, the fancy word for saying you didn't get your ballot or they don't count it, that's that big.
Greg, we've already seen the long lines in the primaries across the country. Is this going to be repeated in the general election? And is that part of the plan, you think?
Unfortunately, it is exactly part of the plan. That wasn't the mistake you saw in Georgia, in Kentucky, in Wisconsin. This is the fact that people were standing in line for hours. Do you think African Americans want to stand in line for hours in the humid rain in Atlanta and get a virus that could kill them? No, they didn't get their ballots. And so when we talked to the people in these lines, they requested absentee ballots. They didn't get them. That's one of the main reasons why people were in line in those long, terrible lines. Plus, with the virus, you can't get we have older people run the polls. They can't get poll workers because it's just too dangerous for them to come in. So in Milwaukee, we went from 180 polling stations to 5 in an African-American city. In Louisville, we went from about a couple hundred polling stations to 1. This is going to be a disaster come November unless we prepare.
Greg, let me ask you this. Is this an argument perhaps to postpone the election, to delay it until the virus has passed somehow or there's a vaccine?
I fear for democracy, any delay I think is very dangerous. What we have to do is not delay the fix. We've got a problem. Let's fix it. We shouldn't be purging anyone from voter rolls this year. No one should be losing their vote. We don't have any examples of people, of aliens coming from outer space. We don't have dead voters. We don't see zombies. We don't see ghost voters. And we don't see people voting 28 times. This doesn't happen. So let's stop purging voters. The second thing, as a voter, when you get that mail-in ballot, man, please look it over. In some states, Alabama, you need a notarization of your ballot or 2 witness signatures. Wisconsin, Minnesota, you need a witness signature. So I'm asking people, just be super careful with your ballot. Ask for it really early. Have someone check it over. And if it needs witness signatures, and we got crazy things. You know that in some states you have to mail in photocopies of your ID. People miss this. And therefore, we've had about 3 million ballots, mail-in ballots lost or disqualified. That was in 16. Multiply that by 10. We can't lose 30 million ballots, Brian. We got to fix this now. And I hope not to delay the election. I hope not to delay the election, but rather to fix it.
All right, Greg Palast, a terrific investigative reporting on this subject. Very much appreciated. Your book is out today, How Trump Stole a 2020, The Hunt for America's Vanished Voters. Greg Palast, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
You're very welcome, Brian.